There is a stone carving of Nefertiti gripping an enemy by the hair, arm raised, about to deliver the killing blow. That pose had one meaning in ancient Egypt. It belonged to the pharaoh. Not the queen, the pharaoh. So what exactly was she? That carving wasn't an accident. Nothing in ancient Egypt ever was. Every image carved into stone, every figure painted onto a temple wall, was a deliberate political statement. Egyptian artists worked inside a strict visual grammar, and the most important rule in that grammar was this: size equals power. The larger the figure, the greater the authority. And in the temples built during Akhenaten's reign, Nefertiti appears at the same scale as the pharaoh himself. Not smaller, not tucked behind him. The same height, the same visual weight, occupying the same sacred space on the wall. That was not decoration. That was a declaration. And it didn't stop at scale. Nefertiti is shown wearing the double crown, the tall, composite crown that symbolized total dominion over both Upper and Lower Egypt. That crown had one owner, the pharaoh. Wearing it wasn't ceremonial flair. It was the visual language of absolute rule, and she is depicted in it repeatedly, across multiple sites, in multiple contexts. Scholars don't treat that as artistic coincidence. They treat it as evidence. Now here is where the story gets genuinely radical, because around 1353 BCE, Akhenaten did something no Egyptian ruler had ever done. He dismantled the entire pantheon. Thousands of years of gods, Amun, Osiris, Isis, the whole vast architecture of Egyptian belief, swept aside, replaced by one, the Aten, the sun disk, the single source of divine light. It was the ancient world's first attempt at something close to monotheism, and it shook Egypt to its foundation. And Nefertiti was not a bystander to that revolution. She is shown beside Akhenaten at every ritual offering to the Aten, not behind him waiting, beside him, acting, her hands raised in the same gestures, her presence required for the ritual to be complete. Some Egyptologists have pushed this further, arguing that Nefertiti wasn't simply participating in the Aten revolution, but may have been its ideological engine, that the theology, the vision, the radical break from everything Egypt had known, may have been shaped as much by her as by him. There is no definitive proof either way, but the art keeps showing her there, at the center, every single time. Think about what that means in practical terms. The Aten revolution wasn't just a religious shift, it was a political purge. Akhenaten stripped the powerful priesthood of Amun of its wealth, its influence, its entire reason for existing. He moved the capital to a brand new city, Amarna, built from scratch in the desert, dedicated entirely to the new faith. That kind of upheaval required total coordination at the top, and the art tells us Nefertiti was at the top. She even had her own epithets, her own titles that went far beyond the standard honorifics given to royal wives. One of her titles translates roughly as ruler of the Nile, language that doesn't describe a consort, it describes a sovereign. Then, around year 12 of Akhenaten's reign, something shifts. The records thin. The inscriptions that had featured her name and face with such relentless consistency begin to fall quiet. Nefertiti, the woman carved at Pharaoh's scale, crowned with Pharaoh's crown, standing at the center of Egypt's most radical transformation, simply stops appearing in the official record. She doesn't die in the documents. She doesn't abdicate. She just vanishes. And in ancient Egypt, when a powerful figure vanishes from the record, it almost never means what it looks like. Because shortly after her disappearance, a new name appears on the throne. Do you think Nefertiti was the true architect of the Aten revolution? Or was Akhenaten the one really driving it? Drop your answer in the comments below. Because what happens next to her name and the throne is where this story gets truly unsettling. That new name was Nefertiti. It appears in the royal records shortly after Nefertiti goes silent. A pharaoh, reigning in their own right, name inscribed inside a cartouche, the oval border that in ancient Egypt was reserved exclusively for rulers. Not consorts, not priests, rulers. And here is what stopped Egyptologists cold when they looked closely. The grammatical endings attached to that name are feminine. In ancient Egyptian writing, gender is embedded in the text itself, and the inscriptions around Nefertiti consistently use feminine forms. The language is pointing at a woman on the throne. Then there is the timeline. Nefertiti vanishes from the record. Neferuaten appears. The gap between those two events is not decades, it is tight, almost seamless. And Neferuaten's reign falls precisely in the turbulent window between Akhenaten's death and the boy king Tutankhamun ascending to power. That window mattered enormously. Egypt was fracturing. The Aten revolution had gutted the old priestly establishment. The empire's diplomatic relationships were straining, and the capital at Amarna was politically unstable. Whoever held the throne in that gap was not a placeholder. They were a crisis manager for an entire civilization. The case doesn't rest on timing alone. Some inscriptions associated with Neferuaten include an epithet that translates roughly as effective for her husband, a phrase that has led scholars to argue the ruler was a woman who had been a royal wife. Nefertiti fits that description exactly. No other candidate fits it as cleanly. Egyptologists including Aidan Dodson and James Allen have argued, through separate lines of evidence, that the identification holds. It is not unanimous. Egyptology rarely is. But the scholarly weight has been shifting steadily toward one conclusion. Nefertiti did not disappear. She changed her title. Think about what she would have been navigating. Akhenaten's revolution had made enemies of every powerful priestly faction in Egypt. The wealth stripped from the temples of Amun didn't simply evaporate. It created a class of furious, organized opponents waiting for the right moment to reclaim their influence. Managing that while holding the throne, while steering the royal succession toward a child king, while keeping Egypt's borders intact, that is not a ceremonial role. That is statecraft at its most brutal and most consequential. And if Neferuaten is Nefertiti, then she did all of it. She didn't just survive Akhenaten's reign. She outlasted it, stepped into the vacuum it left, and held Egypt together long enough for Tutankhamun, her own daughter Ankhesenamun's husband, to take the throne. The boy king who history remembers, the golden mask, the tomb that stunned the modern world. He reigned because someone stabilized Egypt first. That someone, increasingly, looks like her. Now go back to the beginning, back to that stone carving, Nefertiti's hand raised, gripping an enemy, delivering the blow that only pharaohs were permitted to deliver. For a long time, historians looked at that image and called it symbolic, ceremonial, a flourish of royal art that didn't quite mean what it appeared to mean. But what if it meant exactly what it showed? She wore the pharaoh's crown. She stood at the pharaoh's scale. She drove the pharaoh's revolution. And when the pharaoh was gone, a ruler appeared. Feminine grammatical endings, seamless timeline, matching epithets, who held the throne in Egypt's most dangerous hour. History didn't erase Nefertiti's power. It just filed it under a different name. She wasn't stronger than the pharaohs. The carving, the crown, the cartouche, the throne itself, they were all saying the same thing, if you knew how to read them. She was one. Subscribe for more buried history. Like this video if you want to see more of ancient Egypt.